Welcome back to Chef Gone Carnivore, everybody. This is Chef Joe, and today I just wanted to post a quick video breaking down the cooking process of braising. Now, braising is a very simple cooking technique that you can use to make tough, inexpensive cuts of meat beautifully tender and gelatinously moist, like this piece of pot roast I have here. The braising process is very simple and works perfectly for lots of cuts of meat like chuck roast, brisket, beef cheek, beef short ribs, pork butt, pork shoulder. Quite a few cuts are perfect for braising, and today we're going to break down how you can braise any of those items with 5 simple steps. Now, the first step in the braising process is to pat the surface of the meat dry and season it with salt. And you can also season it with pepper and other items if you would like. I am doing strict carnivore, so I will only be seasoning it with salt today. But you want to season the meat before step 2. So once you have seasoned the meat and patted the surface of it dry, it is ready for step 2. And step 2 is searing the surface of the meat. Now, the searing process is fairly simple. You want to find a pot that is large enough to hold your cut of meat and have a lid on it. So once you have that pot, you'll place it over high heat and add a little bit of cooking fat. I am using bacon fat here. You could use lard or beef tallow or clarified butter or something like that. You will want to use a fat with a high smoke point. Once that fat starts to get very hot, I like to tell mine is hot by the light wisps of smoke that I see coming up from it. It is ready to place the beef or other cut of meat into the pot to sear. Now, if you do not hear a loud sizzling when you place your meat in the pan, it is not hot enough. Take it back out, let it heat up a little bit more, and try it again. You will sear it on all sides, and it is time to flip or time to move it once the side that is down has a good color on it, like this chuck roast does here. You can see that when I flip it, it has a really nice sear. That is the color you're going for. And really, you just want to keep it searing until you are happy with the color that you got on all sides of that meat. If I were doing short ribs, I could do several short ribs at a time. If you're doing a larger roast like this pot roast, I just do it in one big piece. Now, once I have it seared on all sides, I'll remove the beef from the pan, and I'm ready for step 3. Now, step 3 is I take whatever liquid I will be braising the meat in and I deglaze the pan. I want to get all of those browned bits up off the bottom of the pan and make sure that all that flavor is in the braising liquid. So here I am using stock. You could use wine stock or some other liquid. You could even use water. It really just is up to you and what type of flavor you want to impart on the braise. Today I am using stock, and I pour it in very hot, and as it simmers, I just slightly scrape the bottom of the pan, and all of those brown bits will come up into the braising liquid, and then it's time to move on to step 4. Now, step 4 is just put the meat into the braising liquid and cover it. Once your pot is covered, it can be put into an oven, anywhere from 275 to 350 degrees or so is fine. You just want it warm enough in the oven to maintain a light simmer while it cooks. So, how long do you braise it for? Well, that's step 5. It's simple. You braise it for as long as it takes to get tender. The nice thing about braising, as long as you're using the proper cut of meat, such as chuck roast or short rib or brisket, it will continue to get more tender as it cooks. So if you pull it out and you test it and it's still rubbery, all that means is that it has not cooked long enough. You want to put it back in the oven for another half hour or hour, depending on how much more how close to being tender it is, and just continue to braise it until that connective tissue breaks down and it becomes tender. The timing will change depending on how large of a cut of meat you are braising and also the type of meat you're braising. But generally, especially with beef, you're looking anywhere from 3 hours to 5 hours. But generally, I like to check it at 3.5 hours, and then Just continue to braise it until it's tender, and you can pull it apart with slight pressure from a pair of tongs, or if you try a piece, it tastes tender in your mouth. Now, I will be doing specific recipes for each of those cuts of meat that I talked about. I will do one on short ribs. I will do one on braised brisket. I will do one on a chuck roast like this, beef cheek, pork butt, you name it. And I will give you an idea of about how long it should take to braise it. For example, this chuck roast in a 350 degree oven took 3.5 hours to get tender and be able to pull apart with tongs like this. But that is all there is to it. You just continue to cook it until it gets tender. And now a pro tip: if you let the meat cool, like if you're able to cook it a day in advance or 2 days in advance, if you let it cool in the braising liquid, it will actually reabsorb some of that liquid and become even more flavorful and even more moist. That's why things like beef stew usually taste better the second or third day as leftovers than it did on day one. You can eat it right after it's done cooking, that's fine, but it will be improved if you're able to let it cool in its own liquid and then serve it later. So keep that in mind. If you're able to plan ahead, you get the best results from cooking it ahead of time and cooling it in its own liquid. Another plus for cooling it in its own liquid is all that fat will rise to the top and become solid. So it's very easy to just remove the fat from the top of the braise before you reheat it to eat. And then you don't have to worry about like that grease slick that's on the top of your broth afterwards. So that is how you braise in 5 easy steps. You can use this method on many cuts of meat. You just want to make sure it's a cut of meat that is suited for braising. So things like anything from the chuck family, arm roast, brisket, beef shank, beef short ribs, beef cheek, tongue, things like that braise really well. Those are great cuts to use. If you're going into the pig, you'd be looking more like pork shank, pork belly, pork shoulder or pork butt, things like that. And then chicken thighs braise well. But you want something with a lot of connective tissue that is a tough cut of meat, and then it tenderizes by braising. I hope this was helpful. You can braise anything with these 5 steps. Just have at it. And then if you want something more specific with a cut of meat, I will be doing videos on those in the future. So don't forget to subscribe so that you know when those videos come out. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. But hopefully it was helpful. And thanks for watching. And until next time.